Drugs are a very different thing today from when we were young.
Drug danger. This morning on Sonoran Living, we're bringing you information that could save lives, maybe yours or someone you love. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sonoran Living. I'm Terry Olette.
And I'm Susan Casper, and in this special half hour, we are tackling the opioid epidemic here in Arizona. The most dangerous drugs may already be in your home. Opioids, already destroying lives in the state. Now a new problem, drugs laced with deadly doses of fentanyl.
She can't wake him up, and an EMT as plain as day is just telling me, how soon can you get here? Your brother's dead.
In this special edition of Sonoran Living, DEA Operation Engage, the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation, and community partner Walmart join us to take an in-depth look at what every family needs to know about opioids.
If you lost somebody to this epidemic, please do me a favor and stand up. About half the building is standing up. There's over 5,000 kids here, and half the building is standing up. Last year, we lost over 70,000 Americans to overdose death. When I say 70,000, a huge portion of that are kids high school age.
That video clip, it is the painful truth about substance abuse and how it is impacting our youth today. And this is the man behind that youth summit. This is Jim Wahlberg. He's the executive director of the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation. So great to have you with us. You know how brave those young people had to be in that auditorium to stand up and be accountable. I want to ask you about your childhood. Let's go back there. Can you share with us your personal experience with drug abuse and how what you've learned is impacting your work today?
Sure. So thank you for having me. As a young person, I was the middle child of 9 kids. My parents worked all the time. I didn't get nearly the amount of attention that I needed from them or really from any responsible adults. And so inside, I felt less than, I had a low self-esteem. I had all these things going on, all this confusion. And I was sort of looking for acceptance anywhere. And of course, I found it in the street, right? And I found it with people that were doing wrong. And I was only too happy to try to do wrong to try to impress them, right? I was just looking for that adulation, whatever it was, right? I was looking for acceptance, and I was only finding it in the wrong places.
Yeah, and you were turning to substance abuse. And then you couple that, right, with what our youth today and all of the obstacles, the competitiveness, the social media, the sometimes in some cases, lack of parenting. Yeah. And that's what's happening with our youth.
I can't imagine being a young person today, really. I mean, with all the pressure and everything, social media is all about, I'm awesome, I'm cool, look at me, look at my fancy stuff. How can you possibly live up to that? Nobody can afford any of that stuff, right? And there's all this pressure. And I also want to talk about popular culture too, because music, right, has always sort of influenced young people since I was a kid, right, for sure, and the generation prior. But we got these giant stars talking about using drugs in an acceptable way, right? That's not okay, right? That is not okay. We've had a lot of young, famous people die recently too from overdoses, right? And hopefully somebody will learn something from that.
So let's talk specifically, Jim, to parents who have teens and preteens, and they are actively trying to keep drugs away from their children. What message do you have for them?
Well, communication is the key, right? From the youngest of ages, we're already pointing our kids in a direction, right? Don't touch a stove, don't talk to strangers, all these things. We need to be having a conversation about opioids and this epidemic, right? Drugs are a very different thing today from when we were young. Right? This is a different world. This is not, normal experimentation. Kids are starting with the most dangerous drug known to man, right? And if this is a progressive illness, where do you progress to there? From that point, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, it's frightening. It's really frightening. And you were saying, don't be their friend, be their parent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, parents, I live in the world, right? I have children, right? No, it's okay to say no. It's okay to use the word no. It's okay. No, you don't need a $2,000 cell phone when you're in the 5th grade. No, you don't need $300 shoes when you're in. I mean, this is ridiculous, right? Our parents said no. Are we still that angry about them saying no to us that we're not going to say no to our kids? Our job is to protect our children. Our job is to guide and lead our children, right? And sometimes no is the best answer.
Yeah. It's a rule in my house. I'm your mama, not your friend. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for the great work you're doing there at the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation.
Thank you.
If there's one thing we've learned about substance abuse, you have to face it head on. No sugarcoating. Parents, we want you to pay attention. Our next guest is here to have a candid, straightforward Opioids 101 discussion with you. This is Leslie Horton. She is the director of Yavapai County Community Health Services. Good to have you with us. And you and I were kind of talking about this moments ago. We are both proud helicopter moms in the middle of this epidemic with teenagers. What are opioids and how easy are they to get?
Opioids come in both a prescription and an illegal form. They are generally called narcotics, but under a doctor's prescription, they can be used in the short term and be effective in cutting pain. However, most of the opioids that are readily available are illegal, things like heroin, illegal fentanyl. They're all derived from the poppy flower, but are all very addictive substances.
Yeah, and oftentimes in medicine cabinets across the country. Paint us a picture. What can opioids do to the body?
Opioids do change the body over time, but they affect us in ways of cutting down pain, which, like I mentioned, can be effective for short-term pain, especially if you've broken your leg, to get through that initial few days. However, over the long term and used chronically or abusing this in high amounts, it can be devastating to the body and cause major changes in the brain and the way that your body deals with pain, making you want to take more and more over time.
Yeah, and I know you've seen cases where people will, they'll do anything to get their hands on opioids. Why are they so addictive?
So that is exactly the addictive component is what causes people to seek those drugs. And like I mentioned, it's good in the short term, but if you use this in high amounts or over the long term, they actually change the way that those receptors in the brain work. And they're less effective to cut pain, creating even changes in their person's behavior over time to look for more drugs and to behave very different. And so they do become addictive, but it can become a chronic disease as well.
Yes, and I know that this distinction has changed in recent years. Why do we now call this a disease rather than an addiction?
Well, with this, especially opioids, those changes in the brain are long-term. So a lot of times those don't go away, creating a person to seek those drugs and those feelings their whole lifetime. And so that is very difficult for especially those youngsters. There are certain things that make someone maybe more prone to take drugs over the long term or become addicted. And that is their age or their genetics. And the younger you start, the more chances you do have to develop long-term effects, which do become a chronic disease over time.
Yes, and I know you know this, the pandemic has impacted all of us. What role has COVID-19 played on substance abuse?
We've seen an increase in substance abuse overall. So especially illegal substances in general, there's been an increased use since the beginning of the pandemic. And we know there's stresses on everyone based on what's been happening throughout the pandemic. However, we do see this increase in opioid abuse as well as opioid deaths. And we've seen a significant increase in all opioid overdose deaths, but especially amongst those aged 15 to 24, which has been devastating for families and communities.
Absolutely, it is. It's heartbreaking. It really is. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. We appreciate your insight, and we wish you there in Yavapai County continued success on fighting this opioid epidemic.
The opioid epidemic has impacted nearly every county throughout the United States. But in Yavapai County, right here in Arizona, they are taking more of a collaborative approach in order to help curb this epidemic. Joining us this morning is Yavapai County Sheriff David Rhodes and also Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Polk, who's joining us as well. So first of all, thank you to both of you for being here. Sheriff Rhodes, I want to start with the law enforcement and what are you guys seeing in terms of criminal activity surrounding opioids?
Well, currently we're seeing just a proliferation really of fentanyl-laced narcotics, fentanyl-laced marijuana products, whatnot, that are made to look like, legitimate opioid prescriptions. And they're just all over the state right now. And it's a real problem. We talk to the other sheriffs all the time. We're all seeing it all across the state. Yeah.
You guys communicate with each other, and that's really scary. It's not just locally, it is across the board, across the country. Sheila, Sheriff Rhodes sees it on the streets. You see it in the courtroom. I want to talk a little bit about the offenders, and you offer something up that I think a lot of offenders should know about. It's called a diversion program. Why is that important?
Well, a drug diversion program simply means that the county attorney takes an offender who's been arrested for possession of drugs or use of drugs, and we divert their case from the courtroom into a treatment program. We provide wraparound services, everything from counseling, employment, housing help, residential treatment if necessary. And if the offender is successful, we dismiss the criminal charges, which means the offender has a clean record, a clean slate, and essentially a second chance.
And is that for first-time offenders only?
No, it's for a multiple-time offender. It's up to the discretion of the county attorney. So we look at each case on a case-by-case basis, but you're not disqualified if you've already been through the program. Sometimes we might feel that you deserve a second chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't everybody? So, Sheriff, I want to ask you, you guys are really focused on an educational initiative. It's called the Reach Out program. Tell us about that and why you're finding it to be so helpful and important right now.
Well, Reach Out is an educational and an intervention program, and it's no more complicated than this. If you're arrested and you come to the Yavapai County Jail, you'll be screened for risk factors related to behavioral health issues, and you'll be connected to treatment on your way out of the facility, even if you're only there for a short amount of time. And what that means is that we are identifying people who have these risk factors that are not uniquely related to perhaps the charges that they've come to jail on. And it's really helped us to be more effective in delivering services.
Yeah. Do you see that making a difference in the courtroom, Sheila, as more of these initiatives reach our community?
Oh, absolutely. The key to the Reach Out program is from the time we first touch that offender, we are focused on connecting them to services. The traditional model made the offender wait until their case had worked its way through the system. Through Reach Out, from the moment they leave our jail, we are giving them a warm handoff to treatment, to counseling, and to other services in our community. It's making a big, big difference.
Oh, so very important. I mean, wouldn't you agree that so many people just don't know that these resources are even available? And B, aren't quite ready to make that decision. And perhaps the thought of jail just might push them in the right direction.
Oftentimes it's when somebody finds themselves in jail that they realize that they need help and they're willing to accept that help.
Yeah. Time to think. All right. Very good information. I want to thank both of you for joining us this morning. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
As communities fight the war on drugs, there's one government agency that is all too familiar with just how bad this epidemic is. The Drug Enforcement Administration, known as the DEA, is taking to the streets of cities and towns to help educate and prevent these drug threats. Joining us this morning is Special Agent in charge of the Phoenix Field Division, Sherry Oz, is joining us this morning. First of all, Sherry, thank you so much for taking some of your time to join us. Explain to us, what is the DEA's initiative here in Phoenix?
Last year, the largest number ever recorded drug-related deaths was 94,000 people. 94,000 of our friends and neighbors, family members, and our children died 61% of those deaths were attributed to synthetic opioids such as fentanyl. In my 25 years in law enforcement, I have never been more terrified of a drug as I am as fentanyl. This dangerous drug has reached our communities and finds its way into the hands of those that we love. The stakes have never been higher. DEA wants to be part of the conversation, and more importantly, we want to be part of the solution. In the last 3 weeks, DEA in Arizona has seized approximately 3 million fentanyl pills. Now, we know that 26% of those pills contain a lethal dose. So law enforcement just here in Arizona has saved potentially over 780,000 lives just in August.
Unbelievable.
DEA understands the importance of prevention through education and the importance of working alongside our law enforcement and community partners. The Operation Engage initiative is meant to supplement the great work that's already happening in communities like Yavapai County. This initiative will provide additional resources, awareness, and education about life-threatening risk of using drugs like fentanyl. It's about saving lives. I'm the mother of 2, and I know that it's really hard to stay up on the latest trends and get online and TikTok and Snapchat, but it's worth it. Get into your kids' stuff, look at it, educate yourself, talk to your children. We have to find a way to work together to turn this epidemic around.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are these drugs coming from, Sherry?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. 90% of the drugs that enter into the United States come through the Southwest border. Arizona is primarily the transshipment corridor for the Sinaloa drug cartel. The Sinaloa cartel is the greatest criminal drug threat to Arizona and to the United States.
Tell me about, you guys are doing something really important. It's called Drug Take Back Day. How does that work and what do we need to know?
So I'm excited to tell you about it. On October 23rd, DEA, along with our law enforcement and community partners, will hold the 21st National Prescription Drug Take Back Day across the country. This initiative is so important to address the opioid epidemic across the nation. The initiative aims to provide convenient, responsible means of disposing unwanted prescriptions while also educating the public about the potential for abuse of medications. It's so encouraging every year these events continue to remove ever higher amounts of opioids and other medicines from the nation's homes where they could be abused or stolen by family members, visitors, children, and teens. Last April, the residents in Arizona turned in 16,839 pounds of unused, unwanted, or expired medication. This was the highest collection to date for Arizona.
Wow.
This is a no questions asked free service.
Okay. So very important, not just to protect your own household, but your community as well. Sherry, thank you so much. We appreciate all the information.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Opioid abuse is not only devastating for the addict, it can also destroy families. We are joined now by Doug Dolan and Casey O'Connor. Doug is the COO of Recovery in the Pines, and Casey is studying to get his master's degree to become an addiction counselor. Both of these gentlemen are in recovery. I appreciate you both for being here and sharing your truth with us. I want to start with you, Doug. Your brother lost his life to opioid abuse.
Yeah, my brother Andy was a beautiful person and struggled with substances when he was younger. He went through a recovery program and actually got sober, but then he had a medical condition and a doctor wrote a pain prescription for him and it just activated that addiction all over again. Yeah. And then it got to the point where his wife was finding empty pill bottles all over the house. I saw him 30 days before he passed away. I told him exactly what was going to happen. Unfortunately, he decided not to get help. And then 30 days later, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting a call from my sister-in-law who's frantic. She can't wake him up. And an EMT, as plain as day, is just telling me, how soon can you get here? Your brother's dead.
That story sounds so familiar, Casey. You too were prescribed opioids. You were on track to be a professional baseball player, and you went to the dentist to get your wisdom tooth pulled.
Exactly. So I went to the dentist to get my wisdom teeth pulled and was prescribed opioid medication for the very first time in my life. And once I ran out of that, I started looking for it on the streets and my life just spiraled out of control from there. And it all came to a head in 2010 when I was involved in a severe car accident that resulted in the amputation of my right hand. Since then, I went back to school. I got my associate's degree at Yavapai College. I went on to get my bachelor's degree in psychology at Arizona State University. And now I'm in my final semester at Arizona State University to get my master's in social work with hopes to become a professional counselor.
Oh, I love this because it's full circle for both of you gentlemen. And now, Doug, you run a substance abuse and mental health center. I want you to explain to us, to parents who are watching, to guardians, what is the difference between experimentation and addiction?
Experimentation is just that curiosity. I want to see what these substances do to me and for me. Whereas in addiction, you know you've already faced severe consequences, you have struggling health, you want to stop, but the behavior is so compulsive that you can't stop on your own.
Yes. And Casey, I shared with you, drugs is a big topic in my house, raising 16-year-old girls. For parents who are watching, what do we do if we suspect that our child is abusing substances?
So we need to stop and think. If we are suspecting our children of using substances, we need to take a cool, calm, and collected approach. If we're taking a much more aggressive approach with our children, they're going to shut down. They're going to stop talking to us. They're going to stop opening up. And if they stop opening up, we are going to have no idea what kind of problems that they may be facing and the resources that they may need.
Yeah. And Doug, what does effective treatment even look like?
Usually it starts with some form of stabilization, and that can be a medical detox, but also an emotional, a mental, and even a spiritual stabilization as well. It's building that trust and building those bonds up front, really getting to know the individual, because next you've got to educate them and find out how did they get here, which often can be cases of trauma or adverse childhood experiences that led them to this addiction. Then it's a matter of also educating them and helping them with implementing new coping skills and other life skills, so those become their new habits and get them on with a new purpose in life.
Yeah, and Casey and Doug, both of you shared with me that recovery is active maintenance. It is a daily conscious decision to stay in recovery. For those family members who are watching right now, who feel like a loved one may be relapsing, what should they do, Casey?
So we need to be motivating them. We need to motivate them to go get back on track, to get back to where they were. But at the same time, we need to do that in a fashion that's, as previously stated, cool, calm, and collected, but also too, we need to draw a line in the sand and set healthy boundaries with these individuals, because effectively, if we give in to all of their demands, we could be making their addiction worse.
Yeah, that might require picking up the phone and making a call or visiting the website. Both of you, thank you for your time today. And that website, if you need help, if you feel that you are a substance abuser or you need help with mental health, please contact recoveryinthepines.com.
You know, we can talk about this drug epidemic all day long, but the bottom line is you cannot help someone who is not ready to get help. But when they're ready, you have got to be armed with resources and information. I am so grateful this morning. Joining us is April Rhodes. She is the CEO of Spectrum Healthcare. She's going to tell us about some of the programs they offer. And also Marilee Fowler. She is the Executive Director of MapForce and Community Counts. It's a nonprofit organization offering up classes in schools and to parents. First of all, thanks to both of you for joining us here this morning. April, I want to start with you, because when someone's ready to get the help they need, you know, it could change in 10 minutes. You got to be prepared. You guys offer a 24/7 crisis responder service. How does that work?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's incredibly important that we're there when somebody has decided that they're ready for a change. And so our Spectrum mobile crisis teams are available 24/7, countywide in Yavapai County, responding to all corners of the county, meeting law enforcement in the field many times and going into people's homes and schools and wherever we're needed. And so basically people can call the 800 number and access our teams 24/7, and we mobilize to the scene in 30 minutes or less. And we try really hard to community stabilize people, meaning that we keep people in their homes or in their community. But if that's not available, then we might need to connect them to a treatment provider right then.
Yeah. Is there a cost to this service? A lot of people hesitate to call because they don't have the money.
No, there's absolutely no cost, and it's available to all people in the community 24 hours a day.
All right. Now, going to jail is something that frequently happens when drugs are involved, of course. But I spoke with the county attorney, Sheila Polk, earlier, and she was telling us about the diversion program. But you also offer up a way for you guys can actually go in. You're working with the jail system and the county attorney's office to help find the program for when the offender's released.
Yes, absolutely. And we've been really successful in Yavapai County because we've built this strong coalition of community stakeholders. And one component of that is Spectrum's presence in the jail. And so we co-locate in Yavapai County Jail, and we're there to receive people immediately upon release, because that can be a real turning point for people, when they've had an arrest. And so it can be that point where they say, I really want to make a change. And the jail does a lot of work to assess people 24/7 and then connect them with the appropriate treatment provider.
Okay, excellent. Meryl Lee, I know that simply talking to your kids can make a difference. Tell me about some of the statistics that you've learned about that.
There's actually a study that was done by the Partnership for Drug-Free America that looked at just exactly that, parents that did talk to their children about drugs and alcohol. And it was proven that those kids are 50% less likely to use drugs and alcohol. So it really points to the importance of those conversations.
Yeah. And you also offer up a good tip on how to start that conversation. What is that?
Right. Well, the first thing is just be age appropriate. Parents a lot of times get nervous to start the conversation, but just be age appropriate. And the one thing I really want to point out right now that's so important is, you've listened about a lot of the facts about fentanyl and what we're dealing with that problem today. And parents and grandparents and significant adults need to have the conversation about kids putting no pills in their mouth at this time, because again, they're deadly. One pill can kill. So simply having that conversation for kids not to put those pills that are not given to them by a responsible adult in their mouths.
Good information. And Meryl Lee, you guys are also involved in policy changes, I know. How can the community get involved and really help fight this epidemic?
What I really would like to encourage people to do is to consider being a part of a local substance abuse prevention coalition. And we're just really fortunate in Arizona that they're all throughout our state. And so what a coalition is it's people from all different sectors of the community that work together on this complicated problem of drug and alcohol use. And so through our talknowaz.com website, you can go to the About Us tab and learn about the local coalition that's nearest to you and just be involved in policy change and providing information. And there's just a lot of work that's done through these coalitions.
Excellent. Good information. Thank you to both of you ladies. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
This has been a very important half hour, and we want to thank everyone who took part. And we're not done just yet.
That's right. We are going to continue this discussion. It's such a huge topic. We're going to do it live right now on the ABC 15 Facebook page. We hope that you join us.
Yeah, a lot of the people you just saw will be in that discussion, ABC 15's Facebook page, and you can learn more at abc15.com/opioids.